examining wrestling stories and matches through the eyes of game plans, adjustments, intangibles, and analytics. This is the series. Previously on the series, CM Punk reached the top of the mountain, defeating Hangman Page at AEW Double or Nothing and winning the AEW World title. It was shaping up to be the summer of Punk. No one could have predicted what happened next. CM Punk did exactly what he said he was going to do when he returned to wrestling in 2021. He proved he was the best in the world by defeating some of the best AEW had to offer en route to winning the AEW World Championship. What should have been the start of a historic reign shattered on the first step. Before teaming with Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler in a trios match, CM Punk leaped into the crowd with a signature stage dive. Much like his timing on the buckshot lariat against Hangman Page, he miscalculated things and ended up fracturing his foot on the jump. Punk still competed in the match, but it would be his last time we would see him in competition for months. On June 3rd, 2022, CM Punk announced he was injured and could not defend the AEW World title. He did not relinquish the championship, but an interim title was created in his absence. Punk would undergo surgery and look to rebuild himself for the eventual unification belt. No true champion wants to win the title without defeating the champion. But as the old saying goes, you play who is in front of you, and you can't concern yourself with the circumstances outside of your control. Jon Moxley won the interim AEW World title with a victory over Hiroshi Tanahashi at AEW New Japan Forbidden Door. He went on to defend the title against the likes of Brody King, Roosh, and Chris Jericho. No one questioned Moxley's status as one of the top wrestlers in the world, but an asterisk was always by his name. CM Punk returned 2 months after announcing he would step away for foot surgery, eyeing the man who was carrying a championship that still belonged to him. Punk was still the linear champion, and that could not be taken from him. He was never defeated in the ring and still had rightful claim as the best in the world. Moxley had proven his worth in the interim, but everyone knew Punk was the man atop the mountain. Until Moxley beat the man, he was not the man. Jon Moxley was the biggest beast CM Punk had ever faced in AEW. Darby Allin was young and consumed by the moment. Eddie Kingston had never won the big one. Wardlow had poor coaching. MJF, who did defeat Punk in the first bout, lost focus in the second bout and was blinded by his own teammate. Hangman Page was indecisive and too risky for his own good. Jon Moxley was confident, technically sound under the training of Black Bull Combat Club, gritty, and had been on top of the wrestling world before. Simply put, there are no holes in Moxley's game. To beat him, you need laser focus and flawless execution. Heading into the unification bout, the odds were against Punk. Not only was he coming off a foot injury, giving legitimate concerns to his health, but mentally he seemed to be in a different place. His focus was not entirely on Moxley, as he used his first words back to take shots at Hangman Page, who he had already defeated. Many greats thrive on pettiness, but given the circumstances and the words, the pettiness was misplaced as anger. To make matters worse for Punk, the bout was moved up a week and a half, giving Punk less time to recover from his injury and a shorter training camp. For a guy who hadn't wrestled in nearly 3 months, Punk needed any advantage he could get. Facing Jon Moxley was a tough enough task. Facing him under these circumstances seemed nearly impossible to overcome. If you took the injury, the shorter training camp, and Punk's comments out of the equation, and assumed he was 100% healthy and focused, Moxley still had in-ring advantages that Punk would have to overcome, as there were no clear areas where Punk had an advantage. He could turn Moxley's aggressiveness against him and keep Moxley off balance by mixing up his targeted areas, but he needed nearly flawless execution to defeat a man who hadn't lost in over a year and had never been pinned in clean fashion in singles competition in 3 years. On top of everything else working against Punk, he was fighting Moxley in Moxley's home state of Ohio. While Cincinnati, Moxley's hometown, and Cleveland, the site of the match, do have a rivalry, this was essentially a home game for Moxley, as Ohio's gonna stick together over Chicago, Illinois. Punk entered the arena with a smile on his face and his trademark, "It's clobbering time!" roar. But as he gets on the apron, Punk implores the referee to get Moxley back as he tries to enter the ring. Moxley is a caged animal waiting to be unleashed, while Punk is more reserved, wanting the fight on his terms. If you're looking for tells before a match, there are plenty during Punk's entrance. After stepping down off the top rope, where he jumped down instead of coming down easy, there's a slight limp from Punk. The limp is noticeable again as he takes the center of the ring during his entrance. The look on his face is also telling, as the usual bravado from Punk isn't quite there. The smiles during his entrance said he's happy to be back in the ring. The look during his intro says there's some doubt in his mind. There's also an elongated pose from Punk, as if he's trying to remind everyone, and himself, that he's the real world champion, while also delaying the bout, keeping Moxley caged a bit longer. Maybe Punk is playing mind games, but this doesn't feel like the typical CM Punk psychological warfare. The bell rings, and surprisingly, Moxley doesn't immediately attack. He remains calm in the corner, and Punk doesn't budge either, as the two men are in immediate stalemate as they wait for the other to get off first. They finally lock up, and after a struggle, Punk asserts his dominance by backing Moxley into the corner. It's an early good sign for Punk that he's able to plant on his foot and power Moxley back. Things quickly turn as Moxley reverses the position and instead of breaking clean, attacks Punk in the corner. Moxley is showing that he's not going to give Punk any space in this bout, and he's going to test his body and his mind after surgery and nearly 3 months away. Moxley allows Punk some free swings, and the Chicago native obliges, backing Moxley up with a series of forearms, punches, and knees in the corner. Punk is showing he's willing to take anything Moxley gives him, and shows aggression in his own right. If Moxley thought Punk was simply going to roll over, he now knows he's in a fight. The referee pulls Punk off of Moxley, who uses that to his advantage by connecting with a headbutt. Punk's aggression works against him, and he was forced away, and Moxley is again showing that he won't allow Punk any space to rest. Moxley fires up with a spinning forearm attempt, but Punk cuts him off with a head kick. He plants on his surgically repaired left foot, putting all his weight on the foot as he hits the kick. Punk immediately grabs his foot, and it's obvious that he's not okay, and he's re-injured things. Punk tried to protect his foot from taking damage by kicking with his right foot, but planting on the left didn't help matters. The fact that he was injured this early while throwing the head kick either indicates that he came back too early from the surgery, poor technique, terrible luck, or a combination of all three. Punk tries to fight on as the doctor nears the ring, and Moxley immediately wipes him out with a clothesline. Maybe Punk could have taken the medical attention there, but in deciding to get up and hobble towards Moxley, he gave the indication that he was going to continue. Moxley was not going to show him any sympathy. Moxley, smelling blood in the water, batters Punk with elbows. Punk attempts to block a portion of them, but he's in a weakened state already, and Moxley is relentless with his attack. Moxley wrenches on the foot of Punk, and it's a testament to his heart that he doesn't immediately tap here. Maybe Punk thinks he can fight through it and still walk away with the victory, but he's fighting harder, not smarter in this situation. The bout looks like a lost cause, and rather than living to fight another day, Punk is going down on his sword. Moxley gets Punk up for one Death Rider, and rather than immediately following up or going for the pin, he looks around at the crowd and then gestures towards Punk. Typically, this could provide an opening for Punk and would be a mistake on Moxley's part to not stay on the attack, but Moxley's confident Punk is done, and Punk's body language gives no indication that he's wrong. Moxley lifts Punk up for the second Death Rider, and that's all she wrote. Moxley pins Punk and unifies the AEW World Championships. While Punk is attended to by the referee and doctor, Moxley ascends with his 2 championships. It's a fitting photo that sums up the summer of Punk. What should have been a celebration of Punk reaching his greatest professional heights was instead a reminder of how quickly things can come crashing down while another champion fights his way to the top. Plenty of excuses could be made for Punk and why he faltered in his first singles match as AEW World Champion. His foot obviously wasn't healthy. Mentally and physically, he didn't have the look of the same guy who won the AEW title at Double or Nothing. The early injury meant we never got the full scope of what Punk was capable of in his return. Maybe the injury was a fluke and he just needed more time. Regardless of the excuse, Punk took the match, the bell rang, and he lost in emphatic fashion. The stats from our friends at Pro Wrestling Musings do not do this beatdown justice. Before the head kick, Punk was holding his own, though Moxley giving him free shots contributed to that. After the head kick, Punk was cooked. Jon Moxley was the undisputed AEW World Champion. CM Punk had to show the resolve of a champion after the most humiliating loss of his career. Next time on the series, CM Punk gets his rematch for the AEW World title against Jon Moxley in his hometown of Chicago, looking to prove the doubters wrong and show he was still the best in the world.